first semester in RP, and also the very first time you're actually you're being assessed, right, in an online open book assessment style. So please make sure you get to school on time. All right, there are a few information that I will show you in a short while, right? A few more pieces of information to help in your preparation, right? So what is the coverage? All lessons are tested, no exemptions. All right, so make sure from lesson 1 all the way to lesson 13, if you haven't downloaded your 6P, all right, please do it by today. Right, make sure you downloaded, consolidated all your materials at one place. All right, but I mean, just based on experience, right? On the actual day, 90 minutes, you cannot scroll through your 6P. You have no time. All right. So from now till then, you have 1 week. Please make sure you do your notes. All right. Now, a few questions have also surfaced. Let me just open up this email. All right, that Vika has sent to all of you just last week. All right. So maybe just reiterate, right? This is an online assessment, but you can actually open. You can bring in any form of paper notes, no larger than A4 size. All right. So a few questions, including some students in my class have also asked me the same question. Firstly, can I bring my notes? Of course, but you have to make sure that they are all bounded. All right. So you have to be either invest in one of those big clips, put it in a file, make sure that there are no loose sheets of paper. All right, so you can refer to paper-based notes. That's why I encourage all of you to go back to the good old traditional pen and paper, because all else fails, you have something to rely on. All right, so I will strongly encourage all of you to do that. And of course, you have access to all materials that you have downloaded on your laptop. All right, so on that day itself, all internet access will be cut off. All right, so there is no time for you to download materials from Leo. Leo will be shut. Okay, I repeat, Leo will be shut. You have no access to internet, which means you cannot, download any more materials. Whatever materials has been stored on your laptop, good job. You can refer to them. All right, but in a very, very bad situation, all right, I've seen unfortunate cases where the laptop malfunctions, all right, it just turns blank. I've seen that in my life, all right, when I invigilate. I've been RP many years. So my suggestion is you don't trust too much of your technology, okay? Please do some notes backup. Otherwise, you end up doing a closed book exams while the rest of your friends are doing open book. And at that point of time, your faci here cannot help you. All right, so please make sure you have some form of backup, unless you're super confident you can do a closed book if all else fails. All right, now the next thing is in the event that laptops are not working, you are allowed to refer to materials. That's provided your laptop is still working. All right, so if that portion of the assessing eQuest has malfunction, you still have your notes stored somewhere in your laptop. You can still refer to them. All right. Now, the last thing is you're not allowed to share textbook, no calculators, nothing. You cannot share, cannot pass things, pass notes. No, absolutely no. All right, but you may have a blank piece of paper if you want to do rough working. But I think for comms, maybe not. But I leave it to you. That is your right. If you want to write, you have this tendency to want to write out. By all means, you can bring a blank piece of paper. Okay, but you can't submit that for assessment purposes. All right, so something else to take note, if you're really sick on that day, you make sure you go and get your MC, because you cannot tell the invigilator, you cannot say that you're absent for an exam without any form of documentation. All right, so just some things for you to take note. And of course, cheating, dishonesty is a major offense in RP. I've not seen many cases, but maybe 1 or 2, it does happen. Okay, I'm just wondering whether you can see my screen. Okay, give me a second. Let me just project my screen in this mode. Okay, so I think I've been rattling on without showing this to all of us. Let me just do that one more time. Okay, this is the email that's been sent to you by Ricky. All of you should have this. All right, contains all the information where you should assess. All right, cool. Thanks, Manda. All right, so what I was referring to just now, and I realized that I was sharing another screen and nobody alerted me. It's okay. All right, so this point about paper notes, all right, and this point about laptops not working, And last but not the least, students having a blank piece of paper for rough working. All right, so with this, let me close this part. And let me just open up another email from ORG. I tell you, you have to be very good in your admin to survive in RP. Okay, now this portion, this part about ORG, let me just open up because we need to get the admin going. All right, now you have to make sure you have downloaded ESE SA 2.2 Quest version 2.4. All right, so once you have downloaded, you should see an icon appearing on your desktop. Please don't delete this. You will need this to do your assessment paper on the actual day. All right, so make sure you have downloaded this. You have installed your 2.2.4, the latest version. All right, so refer to the help registrar email that's been sent on Tuesday, just 2 days ago. So if you haven't, please go through it. Try the sample assessment on HBL setting. If there are any difficulties, please seek help from either registrar or IT. All right, so I think with this, enough of admin. These are the things that you have to do to make sure that your laptop and yourself, they're both ready for your online end of year semester examination. All right, so with this, I close. Any questions with admin at this point? 3, 2, 1. Very good. So,
Can I ask?
yes, sure. Go ahead.
Cannot be printed.
I beg your pardon. Can what?
Notes be printed.
Can notes be printed?
Yeah.
Sure, but it has to be bounded. You know, those kind of clips that you have, make sure they're bounded. Make sure there are no loose sheets. You see my book here, right? As long as it's in the ring form, it's not in loose sheets of paper. That's fine. Okay. All right. Good question there.
Can stapler, right?
You must have a very good stapler lah. And in fact, if it's very thin set of notes, it's fine also. Yeah, stapler, as long as no loose sheets. All right, your invigilators have been tasked to be very, very vigilant, so they will check. Now, another thing that I just came from an announcement, a briefing for all module chairs and also for invigilators is this thing about smartwatches. Okay, I'm not sure about you. I have a smartwatch. Okay, I run with it. It monitors my heartbeat, everything. All right, my step count. For the purpose of your exams, if you have a smartwatch, you have to remove it. It's not just for G107, it's across your exams. All right, so please make sure that if you have smartwatches, for the period of time, you have to put it inside your bag or something, and then you wear it after the assessment. Okay, so that's just a side point for us to kind of just take note and just pop into my mind. All right, I've spent about 30 minutes on this. I should move on. All right, let's go. Let's go on to instructions. Yeah, so let me just open this, or rather put it in presentation mode so that some of you might want to do a screen grab. Okay.
Sorry, Sophie.
Yes. Hello, Miss Chan.
Have you recorded?
No, not recorded. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, yeah, Miss Chan is our co-module chair. Say hello. All right.
Hello.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, yeah, I've done this, okay? So please make sure that because you don't have internet access, you can download all your materials. You can all access your materials at one place once you have downloaded all your resources, all right? Now, let's go to the second part proper, which basically covers lesson 1 to 13, all right? So as I mentioned, nothing is left out, everything is tested, and everybody say, hooray! No efforts are wasted, okay? Because you're putting such hard work and good effort in the last 13 weeks. Everything is tested. All right, so just take a quick snapshot, a screen grab of this particular slide because you will need a big picture to navigate your revision. All right, so without further ado, we are going on a speed bullet train. Please come on board. I'm going to go through in the next 20 minutes to zoom past lesson 1 to lesson 13 to cover them. All right, some of the key points. Now, lesson 1, let us bring us back to memory lane. Now, this is your very first lesson looking at comms principles. Right, now a few things which I will kind of project in a short while. The key thing over here is your communications model. But of course, we have to ask the who, what, where, why question, right? Who is the communicator here? What is the message being communicated? How was it communicated? who is it communicated to, and what happens at the end? What is the result? So this is the entire process. Basically, we talk about communications in a short form. All right. So this is the essence of the communication process. Now we're going to put this in a theory form. Now, so the theory comes in the form of communication model. All right. So we put two persons here, person A, person B. I'm sure you've seen this in a 6P, but this is just to iterate, right? This thing about how communication can take place within a context. All right. So the big word here is context. We have your sender, we have your receiver, but we know that in a communication process, they kind of take turns, right? She can be a sender, but she can also be a receiver. All right. So the encoding process means when I communicate, I encode my message. Now, when you're a receiver, what do? You decode the process. So essentially, this is what it means. All right. So communication is a two-way process and comprised of the verbal communication. So there are words. All right. But yeah, at the same time, we know, especially in lesson 6. All right. So if you can recall, there is a lesson on non-verbal communication, NVCs. All right. So we know that communication is not just two-way, not just verbal, but there is also a non-verbal communication component. So nothing changes. There is still the context, there's still the message, there's still the feedback, there's still the channel and the code that's being used. But what is important over here is sometimes communication can be non-verbal. Okay, just look at all the dramas that you have seen, you know, the movies. Sometimes between two persons, you don't need to say any words. You just need to look at each other, and that's communication, all right? Okay, no questions, huh? I think this is really basic, fundamental 101, your comms model. You will be tested, all right? But of course not in theory. Nothing is, we won't be testing you on theory because it's copy and paste. We don't want copy and paste, okay? We want you to be able to apply. So later in the last part of today's segment, we'll look at application questions, all right? So last but not least, for lesson 1, we're also looking at the 7 C's of communication, effective communication. So we look at clarity, we look at consideration, conciseness, meaning not saying using any more words that is necessary, being complete in your communication, being concrete so that you don't tell airy-fairy and people don't understand. All right, being courteous, being polite, I think is one of the key essence. All right, and to be correct in the information that's being communicated. All right, so when you look at the concept map, these are the 7 C's of effective communication. Cool? All right, no questions. Let me go on to the second lesson. Now, second lesson onwards, right, we are essentially looking at lesson 2 and lesson 3 are in a bundle. So you will know by now, lesson 2 and 3, 5 and 6. And we have a total of 6 large lesson packages in G107 on a reduced CA. All right, so I think all these you have known by now. So what I'm going to do is lesson 2 and 3 in the package. What are the key lessons here? All right, so if you look at lesson 2, we're looking at communication ethics and communication barriers. So what are some issues in comms ethics? We are looking at 4, right? Plagiarism, stereotype, misrepresentation. Now, please take note of the spelling. So we will be marking and looking at key spelling words. All right, which means that if you were to spell wrongly, we will not be able to give you the mark. Please write it down somewhere. Spelling. If need to, just make sure that you copy and paste all the keywords somewhere so that when you need to type it out, there are no errors. Okay. All right. And last but not least, the concept of disclosure of private information. You see this portion in also repeating in lesson 12 and lesson 13 in your media literacy. So a lot of key concepts, guys, do not study them in silos. Do not study them in chapter 2, chapter 3, like that, you know. You have to make sure when your understanding cuts across all lessons. So don't compartmentalize your knowledge, all right? So this is my challenge for all of you. All of you are here because you want to do well, you want to excel. All right, so make sure as you revise, have a big map. And as you revise, make sure you want to see whether there are patterns ongoing across the lesson so that you can cross reference. All right. So the next thing we need to look at is effective comms from the ethical perspective. So this is where your application comes in. And if there are issues that have surfaced along the way, what are some remedial strategies that you can use to mitigate the ethical issues? All right. So let's take a look. This is a very brief summary. Don't take this for real. All right. I will actually advise everybody to go back to your 6P. Make sure you get the key essence, okay? Sorry, did I press anything? Okay, so plagiarism, practice of taking somebody else's work, passing it as your own, all right? Stereotype, I think we know by now, you have a very, someone has a very fixed, oversimplified idea of a person or a thing or a group of people. Now, misrepresentation is basically a misleading or a false account of something, and you cause somebody to act upon your word. That's misrepresentation. All right. Now, disclosure, as the name suggests, suppose something's supposed to be kept secret, but it's being leaked out for whatever reasons. All right. So these are the four types of ethical issues. All right. Let's go on to the next portion where we look at communication barriers. Okay. So there are four. Once again, number 4 seems to keep appearing. So 4 types of barriers. Okay. So we look at physical, physiological, psychological, semantic. Now, based on experience, a lot of students make mistake with physiological and psychological noises, okay? So we use the word barriers and noise interchangeably, okay? You can call them noise, you can call them comm barriers, they're the same, all right? So what is key thing over here is what is physiological, what is psychological? We got to make sense of that, okay? In a short while, the next slide. Okay, so your task also is to be able to apply all these understanding of all these comm noises, right? And explain how it affects communication at the workplace and how noise can be reduced. Now, a lot of times we can't eliminate noise entirely. All right. So I think our task as effective communicators is to be aware and to try to reduce the amount of noise that interferes the communication process. All right. So let's take a look at the 4 types of communication barriers or communication noises. Now, physical, very straightforward. Physical, but basically physical noises are external factors. If there's drilling going on, I would know these are what we call external factors. Okay. Now, environmental conditions are also something that we need to take note. Okay, so basically they're external. Now, physiological and semantic, they are what we physiological and psychological are what we call internal factors. All right. Sorry, I think the timer is on. Right. So this thing about if you're physically unwell, you're experiencing pain, hunger, or physical handicaps, these are what we call physiological. The word comes from physio, the internal bodily functions, right? Now, psychological noise, on the other hand, is referring to things like stereotyping, jumping to conclusion, generalization. Okay. Now, semantic noise has got to do with the use of jargons, acronyms, technical words. All right. Ken? All right. Now, let's take a look at the strategies to overcome barriers. Now, the elaboration refer to 6P, right? So things like seeking feedback, active listening, using the right communication channel. Sometimes the right timing is also very important. Okay, you want to ask for a raise in your pocket money, you make sure you ask at the right time. Okay. All right. Use words that fits the language, fits your audience. Use language that fits your audience. All right. Avoid stereotyping. Exercise empathy. Minimize distractions. So these are actually some strategies to overcome barriers. Now, so we link it back to the communications model. Now, how does it link to the communication model? It happens, right, when there are noises that interferes with the communication process. So we have noises, sometimes there are ethical issues that kind of interferes with the communication process. And as mentioned earlier, sometimes it's not possible to eliminate all noises or all ethical issues. It is being aware and looking at ways to reduce potential noises in the communication process. All right. Any questions? Okay, if not, let's go to the next lesson 4 and lesson 5. They are in a bundle. From lesson 4 onwards all the way to lesson 10, we are looking at business writing. So in lesson 4, you'll be introduced to the whole idea of CAPS, which stands for context, audience, purpose, and structure. All right, so when you look at context, what is it I'm writing about? Who am I writing to? why am I writing this? Why do I have to write a report? Why do I have to write an email? Right? So these are information that you need to understand. And how do I structure my information? All right. So there are many types of business writing. Okay. There's instructional business writing, informational business writing, persuasive business writing, and last but not the least, transactional business writing. Okay. So for lesson 4, we actually focus on these two, minutes and email, which I will show you in a short while. So what is minutes writing? I'm sure some of you may have remembered the Teams. You go into the Teams and then you see a video of three facies, right? And then they are bringing students on an SOT trip, and you are basically trying to get a sense of what they are trying to say and just record down some of the key points that were mentioned. All right, so minutes generally should be written and formatted so that they are clear, concise, accessible, accurate, impartial, and written in good plain English. So in terms of the format, it looks something like this. All right, I'm sure all of you have this template. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the key points. Okay, so you have a short title to summarize what the meeting is about. You have key information about the meeting, when it was held, the date, the time. All right, the names of the people who are present or absent and the reasons why they're absent. The list of topics included as agenda. All right, the key issues that were discussed, details of the items, why was the particular idea rejected, why is the particular idea accepted, some of the key actions, and of course the timeline that that's required for the task to be done. All right, and last but not least, we are looking at the people who have authorized this. All right, the name of the person who wrote the minutes, who checked the minutes, who actually kind of approved the minutes, because we have a action by column, right? We need all these people whose names are in the list to kind of follow up. So we need someone in authority to kind of check and approve, right, the minutes. So that's minutes for us. So what do you need to learn for your ESE? Sometimes they may ask you to identify certain things that are missed out in the minutes. Sometimes they may ask you certain reasons why we have certain actions or timeline. So they may ask questions along those lines in your ESE. All right. So let's go on to emails. Now, emails, we are all very familiar. All of you have written emails. If you have not written emails, I'm sure you have had a chance to write emails in RP. Many, many opportunities, as you can see. All right, so this is an example. In an email, there are 5 key components, okay? You must have a subject line. You must have a salutation. Okay, this is one way to be polite, right? To be courteous in your communication. Then you have your body, all right? So your body is written according to the inverted pyramid structure. Does that ring a bell? Ding, ding, ding. Does that ring something? All right, so you need to make sure that you have an inverted pyramid structure, which I will kind of refresh our memory for us in a short while. You have your closing, and you make sure there are no spelling, typo, or very glaring grammatical errors, okay? So with all these, 1, 2, 3, 4, and of course to take note, let's take a look at the body of an email. So this is the inverted pyramid structures I mentioned, right? It's a good way, actually, not just for email writing, but news writing. You realize that actually they follow this kind of inverted pyramid structure, right? Because people have no time. Sometimes they just glance at your main point to make sure that you get your gist out of it. You have your supporting details. And last but not the least, what are some of the next steps to take? All right, so just bear your inverted pyramid structure in mind when you write your email. All right, okay, so it looks something like this. Any questions at this point? Okay, if not, let's go on to the second part of business writing. In lesson 5, you were introduced to the concept of business report. Right. So why is business report writing important? Now, in some of your, oops, sorry, I don't know why my PowerPoint shut down. Okay, give me a second, yeah? Okay, hold on, yeah? Can you see why I tell you technology is... See? My little trust and faith in technology. Can we try again, huh? Okay, let's go. Okay, where was I? Now, we were looking at business writing, some of the key points, right? Okay, so we look at the importance, we look at the format, we look at why, the purpose of report writing. how to select information and producing business writing. Now, some of you actually, I mean, in my classes, you actually told me in your week 13 reflection that actually business writing or, writing a report is some of the key things that you've taken away from G107. You found it to be very useful, not just in RP, but also beyond, right? In your career and the next time. And I totally agree. All right. Tedious it might sound.
Things that to know.
Okay. Right. So these are the things that you really need to know when it comes to business writing. So what is the purpose of a business report? All right. Summarizing, clarifying, persuading, solving a problem. All right. So these are basically the purposes of a business report. Okay. So what is the typical format? Hold on. Just give me a second. Okay. All right. So you have the cover page, you have the title, you have the recipient, you have the author, your introduction, your 5 key segments. Okay, so you have your introduction, your discussion, your conclusion, recommendation, and of course your references. Okay, so this is a typical format of a business report, and all studies that you refer to needs to refer back to your APA citation, which stands for your American Psychological Association APA Format 7th edition. Now let me just open it up. Okay, now there is a resource here that may look foreign to some of us, but please take some time to digest it, okay? These are your references that I'm sure your FSCs have taken a lot of pain, a lot of time to go through with you, all right? So it's a 13-page reference and a resource. Let me just click through for some of us who may not have seen this. So looking at ways to cite a website, a web article, looking at citations for book, all right, for news article, for journal article. So I will not take this time and space to go through this because time is very precious here. So I just want to bring to your awareness, do not chuck it one side. Do not remember, or rather do not forget that you have this precious piece of resource and it will be tested too. All right, hint.
Sorry, where do we find this?
Good question. My dear, you have to go back to lesson 5. Okay, let me just go back. This is lesson 5, right? Lesson 5, business writing. Go to your resources. All right. It is, if I'm not wrong, it's parked under Learning Phase 1, Learning Phase 2, and Learning Phase 3. All right. It is in one of the folders. Okay. So I am pretty sure that some of you haven't seen this. So that's the reason why I want to show you this. Okay. I show you one more time. Okay. All right. It looks something like this. A 13-page reference. All right, please look through them. All right. Now, I know it looks very tedious, but they are not rocket science. Okay. Once you get it, you will get it. All right. So, for example, I cite a newspaper article. I just pick any one here. This is the very first page. You realize the author always comes first. All right. Author, followed by the year, the month, the day. Why is it so important to put the year, the month, the day? Why? Because newspaper is a daily affair. Okay. All right, just citing the year and the month doesn't make sense. You need to have the year. And then you go by the title of the article, followed by the title of the newspaper, and then the page number. All right. So the format stays somewhat similar if you look at the next few examples. All right. Always starts with the author, the date, the month, the year. All right. So even for your magazine, it's also the same. Can you see? So it is not rocket science, as I mentioned. It's not difficult. It's just tedious. All right, so you have to just bear with it. And I think this is a good skill, okay? Especially for some of us who are thinking, you have to go very far. Actually, year 2, year 3, you want to do your FYP, you want to do your portfolio, you have to know how to cite, and you need to know how to reference. Cool? I don't know, I can't remember who asked that question, but it's an extremely good question. Where do you find this? I hope you found this. If not, you ping me on the site after the class, okay? All right, so let me just go on, okay? So, yeah, we go to lesson 6. All right. So when we look at lesson 6, this is where the kind of fun things begin, right? I know fun in a sense that it's not just writing, but this is the portion where there are you get to present. All right. Some of you actually mentioned that you enjoy the presentations, you enjoy, working in your teams. So there are 5 key components when you look at NVC's analysis. That's your paralanguage, your body language, which is also known as your kinesis, facial expression, physical appearance, and proxemics. All right. big words. So if you can't remember, let me just go through very quickly. Now, paralanguage are basically your and your ha and your pauses. All right. Body language, right? Your movements. All right. Facial expression, your face. Okay. Physical appearance, basically, whether what you wear, your earrings, your artifacts, the things that your hairband. All right. And proxemics, basically distance between people. All right. Now, all these, hopefully, I hope these are not new terms. But if you can't really remember, it is good time to go back to your lesson 6P. All right, to get to refresh your memory on all these concepts. All right. So in lesson 7, we also touch on the idea of persuasive appeals. Now, persuasive appeals, as you can remember, this is also kind of repeated also in what? Your lessons 12 and 13, right, on media literacy, right? Looking at the persuasion that that advertisements or media has on us, all right? So ethos, we are looking at credibility. Pathos, we are looking at emotions. And logos is we are looking at logic. Now, then you have another question. Firstly, does it matter if you write ethos or credibility? My suggestion is learn the real term, okay? Ethos, pathos, logos, and do not be shy to use it in exams, right? That's the reason why we teach you, all right, all these key terms, right? Kinesis, paralanguage, proxemics, flaunt it, all right? Throw it back to us. Tell us how much you have learned, all right? So don't shy away to give us very vague terms. We want concrete terms. So learn all the names, all right? Use it in your ESE, flaunt it because it shows that you have learned it, all right? Now, next, let's go on to persuasive appeal. Okay, we talk about, so lesson 6, right? The concepts are not difficult, right? We look at persuasive appeals. We also looked at earlier on the types of MVC. And of course, lesson 7, this is where you actually did your presentation. Now, take note of the 8 steps. Okay, we don't need you to memorize them. Okay, what we need you to understand is in the process of planning what you need to take note. And what are some things that you need to ensure that you infuse it into your presentation? So things like planning for your presentation. How do you structure? All right, how do you structure your presentation? That's very important. Now, how do you structure your visual aids? Right, your PPT points, your PowerPoint slides, your Prezis, presentations. How do you structure your presentation? All right, how do you anticipate Q&A? All right, questions from your participants. All right, and how do you manage anxiety? So these are kind of the key things. All right, so let me just go in depth. As I mentioned earlier, planning a presentation, you will not be able to escape from your intro, body, conclusion. These are very important. And of course, what are some ways, tricks, and strategies for each segment? All right, I will not go through in details, but basically, if you want to look at intro, your job is to catch the attention of your audience. All right, body is to deliver the main message. Make sure you organize your points clearly. Conclusion is to recap and to motivate your audience to act. All right. Now, when you deliver your presentation, this is where your MVC comes in. All right. Your facial expression, kinesis, physical appearance, and your paralanguage. All right. So it cannot be further emphasized. The use of good enunciation, diction, pronunciation, and persuasion is very important. Your persuasive tone is important in your delivering of your presentation. All right. So let's go to the next portion of managing anxiety. This is actually very common. All right. Some people I mentioned before, I think I don't quote. Not from me. Somebody has mentioned before that actually public speaking is one of the most scary thing that anybody could do, right, in their lifetime. So to present to a big crowd, that's actually quite a daunting task. So you need to know, right, what are some of the ways to manage anxiety? All right, okay. So after lesson 7, we kind of take a break. All right, during the June holidays, we came back, and this is where your blended e-learning lessons came in. All right, some of you actually said you had fun with your SCORM packages. You kind of do it on your own. So lesson 8 really is on data visualization and the 4 types of infographics: your table, your bar charts, your pie charts, and your line charts. All right, so At the same time, you realize that your persuasive appeals or persuasion appeals, right, are also in here, all right, because you needed to write a proposal. Okay, so ethos, your pathos, and your logos came in at the same time. So the key thing over here is really to look at components of a business proposal. Okay, so it is somewhat similar to a business report, except what is the big part? What is the part that is very different? One is a report is looking backwards. I'm looking backward to something that has happened. I took a trip to, I took a student trip to Australia. I came back, I need to write a report. So I'm looking back, what had happened? So I write a report. Proposal, on the other hand, you're looking forward. You want to propose something. I cannot see the next 5 years, but you know what? I have a grand idea that I want to implement for the next year. All right, that's why I write a proposal. So if you're looking forward, one is looking backwards, one is looking forward. The structure is similar. You can't run away from your intro, body, conclusion. But essentially, what is different? The difference is here. Can you see the last few portions, right? Okay, identifying a plan. What about your staff, your resources? What about money, your budget? And who is going to give that go ahead, your authorization, all right? So if anything, I hope this has clarified the difference between your report and your proposal, okay? So be very, very, very clear when you go into an exam. What is the question asking you to do? Are you supposed to write a component of a business report or business proposal? All right, so that distinction you have to understand, at least conceptually. Okay. All right, so any questions before I leave the business writing behind? Okay, let's go on to the next part. Let's check on. So lesson 11 and all the way to lesson 10 to lesson 13, I beg your pardon. 4 lessons, we are looking at diversity, we are looking at inclusion, we're also looking at media literacy. This is a wonderful package because there are so many things that, you know, so much rich discussion that has actually come out from all of you, right? So lesson 10 is on diversity. So there are 2 things I want you to take note. Lesson 10 is on dimensions of diversity. So once again, you have to open your eyes very big and very wide to really ask yourself, what is the question asking you? Are they looking at diversity dimensions, or are they looking at dimensions, cultural dimensions? All right, so let's take a look at the very first one. Right now, there are many dimensions of diversity, but for the purpose of the lesson, in lesson 10, we picked 4. All right, so there's this age, disability, gender, and nationality. All right, so these are the 4 things that we have kind of scoped it for the purpose of G107. Now, if you have been listening to the news, you realize that a lot of all these things are being discussed at Parliament, all right? Gender equality at the workplace, women's role in the workforce, all right? So the issue of foreign expats, all right? All right, and also this thing about age, right? What to do with our our workers, right? Our colleagues who are more advanced in their age. How should we cope? All right, so things like that. All right, so these are the common dimensions of workplace diversity. And lesson 11 and 10 and 11, we're also looking at this thing called inclusion. All right, so equal treatment, mutual respect, equal opportunities for people from all different backgrounds across their many differences. All right, so lesson 11, slightly different. It's not diversity dimensions. We are looking at cultural dimensions. Now, please take note that Hofstede's cultural dimensions are national dimensions, meaning they are across the countries. Okay, so they are actually a profile of people from a certain country. Please do not stereotype people and start to say, you're Japanese, that means you must be like that. Okay, so we must be very, very clear that while we know all these cultural dimensions, we do not fall into the trap or fall into this possibility of, starting to stereotype people. Okay, all right. I thought this is something that I kind of picked up from my class. Okay, they start to say that, if you are from Japan, that means you're like that. All right, you must be very masculine, very driven. Then you cannot be feminine. Okay, I go, not true, okay? Right, so there are 4 dimensions that's being discussed at length in your classroom. So we look at individualism versus collectivism, masculine versus femininity. We have the power distance, high and low power distance, and of course, high and low uncertainty avoidance to the extent how comfortable we are when it comes to uncertainty. All right, so understanding all these will help us to understand cultural differences and at the same time raise our awareness so that we don't start labeling people. All right, so the next 4 slides, okay, they can all be found in your 6P. Basically, it's a very detailed description of individualism versus collectivism. As the name suggests, individualism means, me, I. All right, collectivism means we. All right, power distance, high and low. If it's from a very high power distance, chances are you have top-down leadership, many hierarchies. Okay, I didn't touch anything. And once again, it happens. I don't know why. Okay, let's take a quick look. Okay, don't worry. So where were we? We were looking at cultural dimensions. So if you also have a look at your 6P, all right, looking at the 4 different dimensions, yeah? Okay, so this is where we are. All right, so looking at the different dimensions of power distance, okay, high and low power distance. All right, and of course, the next one, masculine versus femininity, okay. Uncertainty avoidance, okay. Hold on, give me a second. All right, so what is the key thing to remember on masculine versus feminine? Cultural dimensions. This is not gender, all right? So something that we need to take note when we look at masculine versus feminine relationship. If it's a very feminine culture, we are looking at very nurturing, very compromising, all right? So if you're looking at masculine culture, it is a culture that's usually very tough, very assertive, very dominant, okay? So last cultural dimension, we are looking at uncertainty avoidance. So as I mentioned, it's a risk-taking behavior. So if someone is very high uncertainty avoidant, there's a high chance that this person doesn't want to take risk. All right. Low uncertainty avoidance, on the other hand, means the person is a risk taker. Okay. So more entrepreneurial, you're flexible, you can tolerate ambiguity. All right. Now, one of the key theory when you look at lesson 11 is also this Thomas Kuhlman conflict management model. All right, so the 5 different dimensions, either a competing, win-lose, I win, you lose. All right, collaborating, win-win situation, compromising, right in the middle, a middle ground, avoiding means you both parties don't want to engage, yeah. And last but not least, accommodating means I lose so that you can win. Now, I was telling my class, we use accommodating a lot of times because the relation, in situations where the relationship actually matters a lot to you. Okay, all right. So this is something that sometimes when you accommodate doesn't mean that, when you lose means everything is lost. May not be. All right. It also depends on the context and the situation that you're in. Okay, I know lesson 10 and lesson 11 is pretty theoretical, but I hope it has given us understanding of the different types of cultures and inform us of the ways to accommodate, all right, to kind of understand your world. Okay, if not, last but not least, I don't have a lot of time. Let's go on to media literacy. So I think lesson 12 and 13 are the freshest in your mind because we just went through them last, in fact, some of you have just gone through yesterday. All right, so the 3 components, digital footprint, cyber safety, cyber bullying, and lesson 13, we are looking at 4 components, 4 different types. We discussed fake news. We looked at media persuasion, text and subtext, all right? Online scams, and of course, the issue of cyberbullying and doxing. Okay, so these are the key concepts of media literacy. Many of you have gone through this in the last week as well, so I won't spend time. One of the key things for us in lesson 13 is to look at the difference between text and subtext. Now, in a nutshell, text means what you see. Now, what you see also includes pictures, so don't just focus on the text, but you must also take note of the pictures. Subtext is your interpretation and what you think is the message of that particular piece of information. Okay, so let's go on to the next part and also the last part, answering ESE questions. I have a few slides, in fact, quite a number of slides to kind of guide us. So this is the part that you'll be waiting for, all right? So let's try to project this once more. all right, so that all of you, if you want, you can actually capture the screen. Okay, now, first one, before assessment, please revise. Please spend time. Be familiar with the concepts before the assessment, right? So please also make sure that, you know, you have about 1.2 minutes, 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes to attempt each question. All right. So revise all the quiz question and worksheet questions. So study the way the questions are asked, how the answers are given. So you should expect similar questions for assessment. So this is your preparation. Okay. So you just do a quick division. The total marks for ESE is 50. So you have 50 marks to be completed within 90 minutes. You just do your math. All right. So during the assessment, browse through the entire paper quickly. I don't know about you. I like to know how many sections there are. All right, so plan the time that you need for each section. Read the questions carefully. Look at the marks allocated. All right, if it's a 4-mark question, please don't spend anything more than 10 minutes, okay? That will be eating up a lot of your time. If it's a 4-mark question, chances are between 7 minutes or 8 minutes, you should finish writing. All right, analyze the question, which concept is it being tested? And of course, write your answers carefully, specifically. So for example, there are words like identify. So you make sure that you spell out the term correctly. So for example, psychological noise, make sure you spell it out. Or if they are asking for cultural dimensions, you tell me it's power distance and make sure you spell out the power distance. All right? Sorry. All right, so when you ask you to explain, you use relevant keywords and you provide evidence from the scenario. So you can cut and paste conversations, all right, if you think that that particular piece of information is important. All right, so please do not cut and paste from 6P. We can check very easily. So no 6P answers, please. All right, so either you apply it according to the scenario or you write it in your own words. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, browse through the entire paper, have a rough idea what the questions to expect. All right, pick out instruction words, the verbs that are used. For example, they ask you to identify, to choose, to provide, to name, all right, or the why questions like explain, give reasons, how did this happen? Pick out the keywords, all right? Then these are some examples of instructions or keywords, all right? Which diagram would be more effective in helping Jason to persuade car owners to switch to public transport? For example, right, this is a sample question. In this case, you have to know that persuade means is related to persuasion appeals. Must come straight into your mind, all right? So these are some of the things that you need to take note, okay? Yeah. So which is the most effective? So you have to go back to refer to the scenario to help you, okay? Now, step 3, if you please analyze the questions, identify the concepts I mentioned. I give you an example just now. Always look for the marks allocated. If it's 4 marks, make sure you have 4 points. If it's 3 marks, make sure you have 3 points. And the 3 or 4 points must be distinct. All right? Okay? So as I mentioned, don't cut and paste from 6P. Explain your answers clearly. Provide examples or evidence from the scenario to support your answers. Okay? So if need to, adapt your answers so that you can address the scenario. Okay? And do not fish for answers. Okay? If you roughly know it's from that particular conversation, please do not copy and paste and dump everything inside your answers. If you cannot see and we know that it's just copy and paste the entire passage and you put it into the answers, right? It will be a straight 0. Okay? All right, so please make sure that you don't fish for answers. And last but not least, we're looking at you to organize your answers. Some questions have subparts. So you have part A, part B, part C. So make sure that you label correctly because otherwise we don't know how to allocate the answers or the marks. So it's very hard for us. Use paragraphs, use transition markers, things like the first evidence is, the second evidence is, so that, you know, as markers, we know how to look for your answers. All right, so we're also looking at grammatical sentence. Now, this thing about do not writing in point form, some answers acceptable, all right? But in general, please write in complete sentences, especially the explanation questions, all right? Check your spelling, your punctuation. So just another, cannot emphasize this enough because we have seen so many, all right? So please make sure you do that. All right, so these are some sample questions. So refer to the scenario and answer all the questions in the section. So this particular scenario, John and Anne are colleagues in a marketing company. Then there was a conversation that took place, right? Okay. So, this thing like day of birth, and okay, what is this? It's lunchtime now, I'll do it when I'm back. So, this is a very typical MCQ question. Yeah, you have been given a scenario, all right? And then according to the 7 C's of effective communication, which of the following did John fail to show, all right? So in this case, it's B, because, he kind of brushed his colleague's concern aside and said that, okay, I'll do it later when I come home. And then of course, we take note of the tone, right? What do you want this time? All right, so there's certain things you need to take note. All right, so this is the typical MCQ question. There are only 2 types of questions asked. All right, one is MCQ, and of course, the next one that you see over here, they are open-ended question. Okay, so same thing, is a scenario that's been given. It's a conversation between 2 students. Okay, Will and Faisal. So they need to submit a video about cosplay in Singapore and social media. Then the question is, they are supposed to identify 2 possible ethical questions, ethical issues. All right. So I don't expect you to read in detail here, but look at the way it's being answered. Okay. Now, 4 marks, 2 ethical issues, an explanation. So you will know that the ethical issue identified needs to match with the explanation. Can you see? So this is how the 4 marks come from. 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right. So why is it unethical? In this case, you have to explain, because so and so suggested doing something. By doing so, you're actually misleading your audience, so on and so forth. All right. If you tell me it's plagiarism, why? From where do you see? All right. Because, this guy tends, he wants to use the video without crediting her, without acknowledgement, and then use it on her own, as her own. All right. So in this case, you have to explain. Can you see where the marks come from? So this is the second type of questions that very common in G107. All right. Now, if it's any relief, we won't ask you to write essay. And then do I hear hip hooray? Yay! No essay questions, okay? All right, so only 2 types, open-ended and MCQ questions. All right, so let's take a look at the second type. Sometimes you're given not just conversations, you're given infographics. So for example, I'm sure some of the classes actually did this for one of your RJs, if I'm not wrong. All right, so sharks are friends, not food. All right, so you have some infographics here, you have some words, all right? So they ask you to identify persuasive appeals that are found in infographic 1. Now, in this case, 4 marks, okay? Over here, 3 are given and the 3 corresponding explanation. So what you need to do is really just to get your 4 marks is to give me at least, all right, at least 2 of the 3 persuasive appeal identified here. Can we see? All right. So as I mentioned earlier, the imperatives, the verbs that I use are words like identify and explain. Okay. So these are the most common words that you will see in your exam paper. All right, so we have seen a couple. We have seen your MCQ question, how it looks like. We have seen conversations. We have seen infographics. All right, let's take a look at the next type. All right. Now, same thing. This is the type of question you have a conversations between 2 persons. Right, so you're supposed to identify 2 cultural dimensions. Once again, can you see? Identify, provide evidence. All right. So over here, there are many subparts. All right. So you may even branch out to part C. All right, if there's some conflicts, sometimes they may ask you to suggest certain conflict management strategies. All right. So over here, as you can see, the different marks that are allocated. Okay. And of course, your explanation, providing evidence from scenario 5. Okay. So for example, over here, as you can see, if you highlight the lines, right? Okay. They are looking at a quote directly from the passage. Is this allowed? Yes. Okay, especially when they ask questions like providing evidence. You're providing evidence, okay? All right, you're providing evidence. So that's the reason why we highlight. You can actually directly quote from what's happening. Okay, he has been transferred. So he transferred Mr. Smith and Fisher from the German headquarters to Singapore. So it's a direct quote from here. Okay, so questions like asking you to provide evidence, it is possible for you to have a direct quote from the conversation itself. Okay, all right, so the last part, okay, so sometimes it could be a part C, sometimes it could be a totally different question. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes they ask you to think about conflict management styles. All right. Sometimes they may already suggested, using Thomas Kuhlman's style suggests how Jill and Weber can resolve their conflict by compromising. So over here is really an application. Based on this particular scenario, what do you suggest that both of them do if they want to meet in the middle ground? All right. So these are some possibilities. Okay. All right. So for example, you can ask her to go on your leave first and then come back to do your work, or you can shorten the leave, complete more important prioritizing your project, so on and so forth. Now, all these answers are really test your ability to apply. Okay. So there's really no need to go back to 6P and copy and paste the compromising strategy and plonk it into it. It's really how you apply to the scenario. Okay. Right. So there could be also branching out to other topics, for example, accepting of diversity at the workplace. All right. So in this case, describe one way and how each of them can do it. All right. So Kate should do this, should try to do something else, should not do this, and give equal opportunity, for example. So in this case, 2 marks, it means that you have addressed both parties. Can you see in the way the questions are being designed, it actually been very, very carefully thought through. All right. So 2 marks, if there are 2 persons, make sure you match them. Okay. All right. So I think this basically in the last few slides has given you a brief idea how exam questions look like. And like I mentioned, only 2 types, MCQ question and open-ended questions, 4 marks, 6 marks. Guys, I think you are okay. So no essay question. It's a relief. All right. So I hope it assures you. All right. I hope it assures you. Don't panic. I think most of you are good. All right. I hear the feedback generally. I think you guys enjoyed the module. This is really to top it up. Okay. The icing on the cake. Please make sure you do very well. And I wish you all the best. All right. So this is your module diagram, the 3 key components, right? All right. And all the best for your ESE. All right, good job, everybody. Okay, the fact that you're here on the morning tells me a lot about what you really want to achieve for G107. So all the best, everybody. Any burning questions before you leave? Any burning questions? Andres, you raise your hand. Or Sue? Anyone?
Yeah. Can I ask?
Sorry, can you ask what? Do you mind repeating?
Can I ask, like, when you said grammatical errors, what if it's like non-keywords but they are grammatical errors?
We must be able to understand.
Oh.
All right. So the thing is, we have seen, I think some of you, your seniors, right? Sometimes they are very anxious during exams. So they start to type very, very long long sentences, with no full stop. I was reading halfway and go like, what is your point? I don't know. So we'll read many times. So a lot of times examiners, on the other hand, we want to give marks, So we will look very closely, where is your keyword? So in general, grammatical errors are either when the sentence is too long, doesn't make sense, or when the sentences are badly formed that we don't understand. So that becomes a big error. But we do know that all of you are trying your best under exam conditions, okay? So and we are all from Singapore. So as long as I understand, but of course we want you to write good English. All right. So it's really for your benefit, for our benefit, so that we can all give you the marks that you all deserve. Cool? All right. We all want to help you. Okay. So help us. Please don't leave blanks. The most heartache part is where I see a lot of blanks. Okay. And then I don't know how to help because it's 0. All right. Okay, so that's all from me today. Thank you guys for your attendance this morning. Have a good lunch. Don't stress. Okay, study smart. Okay, study hard, study smart. Okay, learn how to link concepts from lesson 1 to lesson 13. Don't study and don't compartmentalize your knowledge. Okay, so I think that's my final words. All right. Good job, everybody. See ya. All the best. By the way, there are a few more sessions. There's one more session in the afternoon. Yeah. So if you want to, do it 2 times. No lah, go and do other things. Please go and revise. Don't have to hear the same old thing as 2 times. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you so much. See you. Unless you have burning questions to ask me. But yeah, all the best. Sue and everybody. Kai Xiang. Yeah, I see. Thanks for all the messages on the side. Raven, Vanessa. Okay. Thank you. And Jali.
Hi. I would
Yes.
like to ask,
Yes.
if I want to quote the evidence, right, from the source, do I not have to use quotation marks?
Yes, you not necessary.
Okay.
As long as you can phrase it in a way that we know that if you want to use quotation marks for clarity, by all means, go ahead. But you will not be penalized for not using quotation marks.
Okay.
Because we are not getting you to cite references. When it's a reference and citation, if there's no author and then you have to quote, double quote, or you're doing in-text citations, then we become very particular. Okay, but over here, because you're writing and typing out under exam conditions, okay, it's fine. Okay?
Thank you.
Hello, Xiao Ting. Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye. All the best, everybody.
Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too. Okay. Bye, Ritswana. Bye, Natasha. Okay. Jiayu. Bye, Zachary. Bye, Jiahui. I don't know you, but yes. All the best. See you. Bye, Vikram.
Hi, Miss.
Yes. Hi, Kelly.
Can I ask you, said for the exam, they are able to grant the time extension, right?
Yes. Do you need time extension?
Is it too late to apply now?
It's a bit too late though, but you need to speak to your program chair. Have you spoken? Not yet, huh?
No, but and after considering, I think it's fine. I think I can stick with the time.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe not to worry. I think for your considerations for subsequent semesters, okay, for all the rest who are listening in as well, there is a possibility of time extension, and I think RP generally is happy to grant it, provided number one, you have a medically diagnosed condition. So, for example, like dyslexia, ADHD. I mean, these are very common. All right. So, if you do have and you have a psychological report that comes with it, all right, you can submit the report through your program chat. So maybe if you don't really know your program chair, you can look out for your mentor first, okay? So your mentor is always your first point of contact. So you can look for your mentor or you can look for your program chair. Then you wave your hands and you tell them, I need this and I have a report. So what they will do is they will talk to you, all right, to kind of check in with you. And what they do is at the back, right, back end, they will submit the report together with your application to registrar office. Now, all these processes actually take place during term time. So it's already too late because as a module chair, we have already sent out the information to students who are already in our list. So by the time the office kind of collate all the information and then they filter down to the module chairs, because there are so many different modules, right? All right, and so many different students, they need time. So if you were to ask me now, it's very, very late. But I wouldn't say it's impossible lah. Okay, so to all the rest who are hearing and sitting in, if you have friends, who might need, you may want to try and give your mentor a call if it's really needed. Otherwise, you might want to consider for next semester.
Thank you.
All right, okay, thanks. Good question, Kelly. Any other questions? Sherry, bye-bye. Brian, Sabrina, Shaman. Right. Thank you so much, guys. All the best. Have a good lunch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wishen.
Thank you.
Bye, Kelly. Okay, I'll be the last one to leave.